Welcome everyone again to the Suncoast Digital Connect, this Learning Thursday webinar series number 3. As we move to the next slide, my name's Sherry Corrier. I'm the lead initiative director for the Digital Access for All initiative. Today, we're going to prepare you a little bit for the session, what to expect. I really hope all of you will please mute yourself during this first portion of the program. We'd love to have you rename yourself on screen, your name, your organization. It's really helpful, especially for our speaker. By the time we get to the Q&A, that she can see who you are and where you're from and who you're representing. So we'd love to have that. Also, please introduce yourself in the chat box as well with your name, organization, and a role if you'd like to share that. We're also going to challenge you one more thing today, and that's one word that describes the way you're feeling today, right now. And we're actually home based right here in Florida, right on the Suncoast, just a little bit south of the Tampa Bay area. And it is a beautiful fall day here. Lovely weather. If you're joining us there, you're also enjoying that. So use that chat box as much as you can. We do record these sessions so we can share them out with you after the session as a follow-up. We also ask for you to rate in our survey to share things you might have learned or share your experience. So please fill those out as well. That's really helpful for how we move forward in our additional series. And then we will be taking a photo of the group just after our speaker completes her first round of presentation. So we'll ask you to come on screen real quick so we can take a group photo. So that's how to get prepared for today. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to that next slide. Love to introduce you to our Digital Access for All team. Great professional team here at the Patterson Foundation. Many of those folks are behind the viewing wall today. You might be able to see them on the group gallery, but it's a great team. Everyone really works hard to bring you these different and important digital access information webinars. On to the next screen. The Patterson Foundation actually created the Digital Access for All initiative in June of 2020. So we've been at this for a while, but we were exploring multiple sectors that are working in the technology world and how people were going to be connected. You all know that about that time we were dealing with a global pandemic. And so we were concerned that people might not have access to each other. A lot has happened since then. But as many of you know, there's still quite a few struggles for people being connected, having working devices, or actually enhancing skills to be able to utilize them. So we work to connect in these meaningful ways by offering webinars with folks that are in the business of making sure people are connected, work really hard with underserved populations, and just keeping us all sharp in the digital access world. So after each webinar, we do also invite you to join that Q&A. You'll have an opportunity to ask our speaker questions and maybe dig a little deeper into some of the things she's sharing. And then each of our webinars are followed by a Beyond the Blog podcast that our speaker completes with us so we can continue to share months out after today's program. So next slide. Why all of you are here is you are here to meet our speaker today, Estefania Zavala, and we are so excited to have you here. She is the Digital Equity and Economic Inclusion Officer for the City of Long Beach, California. We have provided her bio here. We'll also be sending that out, but you can see that quite a bit of work that she has done in the government world, especially programming with over $300 million in funding from the American Rescue Plan and other recovery funding sources. And we know that that was a difficult time and really important on how those things got carried out to our different constituents. She also holds a master's degree in public policy from the University UCLA and is focused on future of cities and the civic challenge they face. So welcome, Estefania. I'm going to turn it over to you. Welcome to the Digital Access for All webinar series.
Thank you so much to the whole TPS team for having me. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to be here today and to talk to you all about just some of the work that the City of Long Beach has been up to. Before I dive in, I'm going to give you a little bit more context on me, my role, and then also on Long Beach. So as Sherry mentioned, my name is Estefania. I am the Digital Equity and Economic Inclusion Officer for the City of Long Beach. Long Beach has a population of about 500,000 people. It is just south of the city of LA, so we're as diverse as Los Angeles. There is a majority minority population with Latino, Black, and Asian populations. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Cambodian population within Long Beach. Long Beach has the largest Cambodian population outside of Cambodia. During the 1970s, the Cambodian population faced persecution from the Khmer Rouge, and many refugees resettled into Long Beach, giving us a really complex and rich population and community of Cambodian and Cambodian American community members here in Long Beach. And then a little bit more about me and my role. So whenever I hear that somebody is working on digital equity in local government, I always want to know how they were funded and how that position came to be. Long Beach has been a real leader in digital equity, and I can confidently say that because it was way before my time. Since 2017, we have been focused on digital equity. My role was created right after the American Rescue Plan. And something that we have been really focused on is thinking about digital equity, specifically thinking about how we look at our community members, the folks who have been left behind by other processes, folks who also have issues with language access and language accessibility, and how we focus on them. So I wanted to give that context before we get started. But today I'll be focused on community-led digital inclusion. Next slide, please. So I have some goals for us today. The first one is to think about how we identify and pursue state level or utility funded grants. I know there are some folks joining not just from Florida, so I have some questions and some thoughts about how we might do that. The second one is how we align local initiatives with political priorities to build long-term support. And the third is to leverage cross-sector partnerships to sustain programs and amplify impact. So those are all the things I'm hoping to cover with us today. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the Cambodia Town Learn and Earn program. So as I just shared, big Cambodian community in Long Beach, there is a specific neighborhood called Cambodia Town right in the middle of Long Beach, where this community has a lot of leadership, where we've seen really great Cambodian influences into our built environment. We have a lot of really cool signs and a little park there. Also there is the Mark Twain Neighborhood Library. So what my team has done, and when I say my team, it is me and one other person, is we have built the Cambodia Town Learn and Earn program. This program provides 10 hours of hands-on digital literacy training. So that's five weeks of 2-hour sessions. Topics include computer basics, internet navigation, email, and online safety. And then we've switched it up a little bit, but we generally provide the training in English with simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and Khmer. So even though this is Cambodia Town, the majority of the neighborhood is still Latino, and therefore we do try to be mindful of language access for Spanish as well. Everyone who participates in this program receives a free laptop provided by our partner at Human IT. And our goal here is to serve 50 residents across 4 cohorts. I would also say that our goal is to try to make this program sustainable and try to have it run multiple times, not just one time. And I'll get into that in a little bit. And then finally, our eligibility is that people have to be Long Beach residents, and they have to be at or below income thresholds for the California Alternative Rates for Energy, SNAP, National School Lunch Program, or WIC. So that is just an overview. And now we dive into the funding and the partnerships. So we are funded by the California Advanced Services Fund. That is run by the California Public Utilities Commission. I've gotten really used to saying that mouthful of words, but essentially our utilities regulatory board has a grant opportunity, and we were able to access that. And that is why there is all those eligibility requirements that I just covered. We have a partnership with United Cambodian Community for outreach and for facilitation. United Cambodian Community is a community-based organization that has been serving the Cambodian population in this community for over 40 years. And they were essential in getting people to trust us and to show up to the class, and to show up to the class time and time again in order for them to complete those 10 hours and get their free laptop. I really want to stress that there is absolutely no way we would have gotten people to show up like that without our community partner. And then it is administered by us. We are the Long Beach Office of Digital Equity and Inclusion. And then our devices are provided by Human IT. And as I said earlier, it is held in a local library. So a little bit about the funding source, because we really want to get into sort of the nitty-gritty on today's call. So as I said, the California Advanced Services Fund, it provides grants that increase broadband access and digital inclusion, such as grants for digital literacy training programs and education to community members with limited broadband adoption. It is structured into two sub-programs. The first one is related to digital literacy, so providing training in public education. If I want to be able to pay for a laptop through this program to give out to a resident, I have to provide 8 hours of training to this resident. And that has to be documented, and that resident needs to have income eligibility documented as well. So that is definitely a hurdle. It's hard to show up for 8 hours of anything, and people at this income level, at any income level, have all sorts of life events that make it hard for them to show up to a class 5 weeks in a row. So I do want to kind of say that there are some barriers there. The second sub-program, which we won't get into as much today, is the Broadband Access Project. And so this actually allows us to do infrastructure work and offer free internet in public spaces, as well as community outreach for people to find out about the free internet. So something I want to highlight about this program, it is a lot of money. There is a lot of money in this program, but it is structured in a way where it is very hard to get a lot of money from it. We've had great success, but in past iterations and when there was American Rescue Plan funding, this was not the most administratively feasible funding for us to go after. And I'm saying that frankly, as a city, I think we try to be really thoughtful about what grants make sense for us and what grants don't. In the past, this wasn't something that necessarily made that much sense for us. But because of the Digital Equity Act being rolled back, this was something that we really wanted to pursue to see if we would be able to turn this into sustainable funding. Next slide, please. So as I said, this opportunity is funded by utility ratepayers, not legislative appropriations. So the way it was funded was through legislation. A certain percentage of all California utilities is paid into the California Advanced Services Fund. And that is why there's so much money in that fund, because obviously we all have to use utilities. And the California Public Utilities Commission has regulatory authority to create these accounts. So the ones I just talked about, the ones about digital literacy or the ones about other stuff, And they don't need the legislature every time. And then the California Advanced Services Fund evolved from infrastructure only to include adoption accounts. So I also want to stress the ways in which this funding opportunity is a direct reaction to advocacy done by community partners with their state legislators, who were then able to convert that into legislation to pass at the state level. And I think that's really important because even if your state does not have a telecom surcharge revenue, there is always space to begin advocating for something like it. Because when the California Advanced Services Fund started, they were not thinking about digital equity in the ways that I just said that Long Beach does. They were thinking about it as an infrastructure challenge. And we all know it is more than an infrastructure challenge. It is also a digital skills and digital literacy challenge. And so community partners, community advocates before me have tried to make this point and have successfully made that point to make this funding accessible. So I have some questions for you that you could either think about in the chat or that we could discuss afterwards during our Q&A section. Does Florida have unused telecom surcharge revenue that could be redirected, or whichever state that you're a part of? Who are Florida's equivalents to California's consortia regions, and do they have the capacity to apply? So consortia regions, just briefly, in California, we do have our state, because it is such a large state, split up into consortia regions that help advocate for digital equity and for infrastructure. And this is a pretty formal consortia, but there's also, of course, informal consortia. So at Long Beach, I also lead our digital equity stakeholders, which is our local community-based organizations. So what are the spaces, essentially, in which we have a group of people that can do advocacy? And we can chat about that in just a second. So what else does the Cambodia Town Learn and Earn program focus on? So I want to talk a little bit about our partners. So as I mentioned already, the United Cambodian Community, what they did during this program is provide community outreach to potential participants. They provided cultural navigation, trust building, and in-language education. I'm going to pause here and just tell you like a little bit of what the classes actually felt like so that it feels more real to you. We are going to have 3 or 4 cohorts. We have the capacity to serve 50 people. We are halfway through our second cohort, and we already completed our first cohort. The first cohort, as I mentioned, was led in English by the Office of Digital Equity by my team member, Raul. He was giving the lessons to the digital skills curriculum that he had spent about 4 months building. It was really amazing, and he was teaching in English. And we also had folks from our Office of Language Access, which were from our language access team from our city's Office of Equity that Long Beach is really lucky to have, in which has been advocated for our community. And so what that means is that while Raul was teaching, there was simultaneous interpretation in Spanish and Khmer, so that our residents had their little headphones in and they were sitting in front of a computer lab at the library. And then UCC was also there answering additional questions. This was really great. It was very equitable. People had a lot of patience with each other, and people helped each other. Somebody who only speaks Khmer was helping somebody who only speaks Spanish. It was really lovely to behold. For our second cohort, we actually wanted to focus on making it a little bit less of an uncomfortable feeling in terms of sensory. So if, for example, you're a person who speaks Khmer and you also speak a little bit of English, if somebody is talking to you and teaching the class in Khmer, in English, but you're also getting in-ear translation for Khmer, you're just a little bit confused. And that was the feedback we heard from our first cohort, So our second cohort is actually entirely in Khmer. And we are having our UCC partners teach the curriculum that our office built. And we see that as a great way of beginning to make the program a little bit more sustainable so that our partners are teaching it instead of us. And then the Mark Twain Library. This is a physical space, an existing community anchor. Everybody knows what a library is, and that's great. And I also think that libraries are inherently kind of trusted community spaces. A lot of the folks in the neighborhood who are taking this class had been to the library before. Everybody knows where the library is, and that's beautiful. And then we had Human IT. I did see somebody on this chat from Human IT, which is wonderful. So Human IT is fairly local to us. I think their headquarters are in Bellflower. And they helped us come up with a really good laptop, and they helped provide 1 year of IT support for those laptops. And then finally, my office, the Office of Digital Equity and Inclusion, we wrote the grant. I mentioned Raul wrote the digital skills curriculum. We provided program coordination, and then we also reviewed all of the eligibility verification for the income eligibility. But UCC helped us with that. But we had to kind of approve that everybody was in the class. Everybody in the class was eligible because we didn't want to accidentally have somebody sit through a 10-hour class, which hopefully they enjoyed, but then not get their free laptop afterwards. And then I've already talked a little bit about why these partners matter. But UCC brings, like I said, over 40 years of supporting the Cambodian population. And then library I just talked about. And then Human IT handled the device life cycle beyond the 1-year support window. So essentially, they helped us come up with a really good laptop. They helped us make a lot of those decisions. They shipped them for us. I'll just take a really brief note on the device itself. We ended up coming up with a refurbished Dell laptop for everybody. The grant allows us to spend $300 per take-home device. And so it was really great that we were able to come up with a Windows laptop with that amount of money versus a Chromebook. There's nothing wrong with Chromebooks, and Chromebooks have been great in closing the digital divide. But we heard time and time again after closing out our American Rescue Plan programs that Chromebooks were not the best solution for our population, for the population that has limited probably English skills and that has really low digital skills as well. So that was why we chose a Windows laptop and why Human IT was really essential in making sure that we were able to get a really good laptop at a really good price. And as I said before, each partner sort of fills a gap that the city cannot address alone. Okay, and then something to kind of bring strategy into this. So far I've described a grant opportunity that my office was able to receive. Through that grant opportunity, we were able to pay our partners, Human IT and UCC. But I want to talk a little bit more about why we chose to do that program and why we chose to do that program first. So when we did the first cohort, they graduated, and that day they got their laptops, and they also got certificates from our state senator, Lena Gonzalez, as well as our city's mayor, Rex Richardson. And that was really wonderful because if I have learned anything, it is that elected officials do like to give out certificates. And so that was really valuable. They got to show up and feel like they had been a part of our class and give out certificates and shake everybody's hands. Our program participants were really excited. They asked if they could bring wives and family members, and we said yes. So it really felt like a celebration. And the celebration was intentional because we want programs like this to be funded in the future. And you really can't do that without political support and without providing sort of a political win for our mayor and our state senator. One thing that I was really intentional about as we were beginning this program is framing digital equity as workforce development and not sort of charity. We're in a weird place politically on the words equity, but I think that digital equity, digital inclusion is still sort of broadly appealing. And the more I framed it around workforce development, and then also with our mayor's agenda on economic opportunity and language access, the more sort of sense it seemed to make in the current moment. In Long Beach, language access is really important. I just mentioned all the different communities that live here. So that felt really important. And I think that was what got the politicians to show up for us. As I said, the California Public Utilities Commission is a state entity. And so having our state senator there was very important. And photo ops justify future budget requests. And I think my last takeaway on that is that every graduation ceremony is an opportunity for celebration and for advocacy. Okay. So what happens after the grant? What happens once we have finished serving 50 people? So we really want this work to be ongoing. And we really want to build that sustainable capacity. So I'm really pleased that UCC will be applying to the next round of funding directly without us. I love that. We are handing them our grant application. We are handing them all of the digital skills curriculum that we've built. They get to run with it, and we're writing them a letter of support. And we as a city will be moving on to other libraries and other communities in Long Beach. We have been able to have early wins. So UCC actually received a grant from an internet service provider as a result of this program, and we were very happy that our partner got that funding. Sort of money unlocks other money. And so I really wanted to emphasize the ways in which, you know, even just having this small grant really kickstarted all of this work and enthusiasm for the digital equity work in this community. And yeah, my last point is that we are going to start running this program at other libraries. We're excited for our UCC partner community-based organization to start being the technical assistance providers at other neighborhoods, and for us to sort of learn from all of the takeaways, the lessons learned, the mistakes, the successes from this first program, and start to build this citywide. So we're able to really tap into this funding. And hopefully eventually the city is running less of these programs and our community partners have all of these things down pat. And with that, I believe that our time is up, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you all have.
What an informative session. You threw so much in there. I was taking notes, and we're definitely looking for questions from our folks here, along with in the chat if you have them, or anybody right now, if you'd like to raise your hand, our speaker can call on you. Any questions? If not, I can start with some that have already been sent to me by folks prior to actually finishing up today. I'll start off with one, and then please feel free to add any in your chat. All right, so what metrics, Estefania, what metrics or indicators really best captured your long-term digital equity progress, like beyond program completion and, you know, numbers?
Yeah. I think this has been something that we've been thinking about a lot. So as I mentioned, the grant itself doesn't allow us to serve that many people, but the people that it does allow us to serve are getting 10 hours of education and a free computing device. So we hope that it's highly impactful, even if the breadth of it is quite narrow. So we don't have specific numbers attached to how many people we want to serve, other than making sure we do serve those 50 people so that we get the grant eligibility all squared away. What we are instead targeting is moving around citywide and that sustainability that I mentioned. So for me, success looks like how many of our partners are willing to take on this program after the city completes its initial pilot. How many of our residents, did via their program survey say that they learned something from our program. And then how many devices have we given out? So trying to really go from sort of those small metrics, like number of devices given out, to those larger ones, which is what is the impact we're having? How many libraries, how many communities are we ending up serving?
Great. That's helpful. Reed asked in the chat about, I know you talked a lot about the funding and the surcharge and unused surcharge. He's asking about how would a state go about finding out about this particular opportunity?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many states do have this, but I would imagine that most states have regulatory bodies for their public utilities. And so whether that regulatory body is capturing any additional fees that can then be turned into digital skills grants, or probably broadband adoption, either infrastructure or digital skills grants, I think would be a good opportunity to look into. And if there isn't any, like I said, whether there is space to advocate for something like that.
That's good. Another question that I just got in here was that while we're focusing on the Cambodia project, you have other languages that you work with out in Long Beach. Will you want to share with us what those are and how you've had to deal with those as well?
Yeah, so as I said, Cambodia Town, even in this small community, is majority Latino. So Spanish is a really is one of the languages we work with. Our other city language is Tagalog for our Filipino population. Um, how have we worked with them? So I think it is also about having a great deal of cultural humility and um, building cultural relevance into any program that the city creates. Um, And that means that you can't just translate everything into 3 other languages and be done with
Mhm.
it. So we focus a lot on plain language where we can. Obviously, when you're building eligibility requirements for a program, there are limitations to plain language. Um, we focus on working with community partners that already have relationships with these communities. And then, like I said, the cultural humility piece is big. Khmer has a different alphabet. Um, when I think of like my mom who speaks mostly Spanish, it's not always very helpful for her to have printouts in Spanish, to have like the written language in Spanish, because her literacy level isn't that high. But what I
Mhm.
noticed for our Cambodian population it was very helpful for them to have printouts of everything that we were teaching, because the alphabet is different. Probably their literacy skill looks very different, especially for the older adults. And also probably because it's hard for them to see screens because there were a lot of older adults. And so it was really helpful for them to have that handout. So these are all lessons learned. I wouldn't do that if I were teaching a group of women in their 50s who mostly spoke Spanish, because that probably wouldn't be as helpful for them. So, you just can't like take every single situation and apply it to every single community.
Mm. But it shows the thought process that you've taken to address all those, and I think that that's key. As we know, we're here on today's session, there's folks from across the country on here, and so they're all probably dealing with similar things. You talked a lot about your connection with libraries, and I think our audience would love to know, was that an easy Was that an easy relationship, partnership, or were there intricacies about how that needed to work for it to be successful?
Um, that is a great question. It was an easy relationship in that we're the city, the library is also the city. And so they were excited to work with us. Librarians are so passionate about digital skills. I believe something else I should have mentioned when I was talking about political alignment also is that I do think that more than workforce development, probably we should be aligning digital inclusion to libraries because everybody knows the importance and the value of a library. So in that way, it was easy. In the way that it was hard is that the library itself as a physical space was imperfect because it is very small and it is it is in the most dense part of our community and it has a lot of resources. Well, it has few resources, but a lot of need for it. And so we had issues like no running water at the library, which means everybody has to go home. Or in the morning when we get there, the library is locked and there is a security guard for us to be able to get in because there have been break-ins. The library's computer lab is really small and they took away 4 laptops due to needing them elsewhere. So things like that I think came up a lot and makes sense for it being such a necessary community hub. It also falls victim to that.
Yeah, it really does. Okay. Hey, Maribel, you got your hand up. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I really want to take this opportunity to thank Estefania for joining us. I really want to drill down on one more thing because as someone who has implemented digital skills with populations that speak many other languages, I think the one thing that I really want participants to walk away with is that we don't want to focus on the fact that this was a population that was only centered around 2 different languages, the Spanish and the Khmer. What you've done here, Estefania, is create a model that is replicable and that is useful for anywhere, any place. Sure, we can make some tweaks, right? Because we have to. Nothing is ever 100% boilerplate, but that's what makes digital skills training really interesting. Can you say more about why this model is so important for what you plan to do in future communities?
Yeah, thanks, Maribel. So I think to my earlier point, we're trying to stick with libraries and in some cases with parks as our community hubs where we know that people already like to go there and they trust the people who work there. And we're trying to spread that out citywide. And to Maribel's point, also meet the specific community needs at each specific library and each specific park. So on our west side, that is where mostly our Filipino population lives. And so when we're there, we will try to be relevant and culturally relevant to the Filipino population. In our North Long Beach population, it is still predominantly Latino as well as Black. And so when we're there, we will also try to be culturally relevant to that part of the neighborhood. Just trying to make sure that we're aligning as closely to libraries and to parks and working with our community-based organizations as our leaders and trying to make sure we're meeting the specific needs of each specific population. And I'll also say that it's even different, like just running the second cohort. The first cohort that we had was mostly older adults. Some of them had never touched a mouse before. Some of them had never touched a keyboard before. This second cohort that we're running, the digital skill level is a little higher. These people are curious about AI. They're curious about chatbots. They're already running their small business via Gmail. So we're adapting every single time.
So important. And that you brought those, especially those 2 items up towards the end, as we know everyone's facing those same types of questions. Estefania, thank you so much. We're not done with you, okay? So stay on board. We do have a few additional announcements we want to give the full group, and these are some additional things that will help you stay involved in the work, be able to share. If you think about your reach now, folks, that you're on this webinar, your reach fully across the country, we have a Digital Access for All DA4A LinkedIn group, and we have a scan here. You can join that group. We'd love to have more members on that. We're at about 143 right now, which may not sound like a lot in some of the larger groups out there, but they're a good, strong group. And really the purpose is to create more of a connectivity, collaboration, hearing about different things people are dealing with, especially we'll be asking our speaker here today to add some questions in that will help her know that her information reached you, and then any kinds of things that might be helpful for her. But we really hope you'll join that LinkedIn group. We hope that you'll really try to challenge all of us with questions or just share important things that are happening. I know we talked about the libraries, and Aaron in the chat box, thanked us for doing that. We'd love to have more library involvement, more other groups that are involved in digital access and digital equity. So thank you for considering joining the LinkedIn group, and I hope that you've scanned that QR code. Also, we have other, as we mentioned, we have other webinar series. We have one more coming up in this fall series, and that will be on December 4th. That's also a Thursday for Learning Thursday, same time, same place and format. And this is with Kyla Williams out of the Chicago area, and she'll be talking about from digital inclusion to digital ecology, designing the next chapter of connection. And so it'll be really exciting. We hope you'll come back, have the opportunity in the follow-up email that we do to register for that one if you haven't yet. And then you'll also be seeing some more reach out by our office, by myself, to help you get connected with that. All right. So very exciting there. And then we'd like to continue the conversation. So those of you that have been able to stay on, we're going to bring our speaker back up, and we're going to open this back up to the full group. And in the meantime, I got another question. And while I'm reading that one, because it came through on my email, be thinking if you have others, you can put them in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand and ask it yourself. So Estefania, one more question that we received was about the stakeholders. People were asking me in an email, like, how did you really identify the stakeholders, and was it difficult to get them on board? And you used the word sustainability. So you used it in funding, but also would that pertain to the stakeholders sticking with you?
That is a great question. So I'm trying to figure out how to make it short. Basically, we've been working with our Long Beach digital inclusion stakeholders for a really long time. The work began when our former councilwoman, now state senator, Lena Gonzalez, began directing city staff to look into digital equity and digital inclusion. From there, I think the first step in digital equity and digital inclusion is building a stakeholder group. And so we looked at all of our community-based organizations in the city and talked to them and thought about digital inclusion together. Most community-based organizations do digital inclusion. If you're a trusted community partner, somebody is going to come into your office and say, hey, can you help me apply for SNAP? Can you help me look at this WhatsApp message from my sister? And so once we kind of clicked that together for folks, I think it was really easy to make sure that people knew the value of it. And then my predecessor did a really great job building a strategic plan together. So we do have a strategic plan and an implementation plan together that was co-created by all of these stakeholders. And then the last thing I'll say, just in terms of sustainability, is that I do think that because these are community-based organizations, the attention on digital equity kind of ebbs and flows. And I've been trying to think about how to meet everybody where they're at. In the LA area, community-based organizations who serve immigrant populations have had other things to think about this year other than digital equity. That does not mean that these organizations don't care about digital inclusion or digital equity anymore. as our SNAP benefits potentially get frozen right now, I would also imagine this is not the time for me to host a really big meeting on digital inclusion stakeholder with all of the community-based organizations who are probably working hard right now to think of different mutual aid to stand up around food distribution. So that is also something that I hope is making our stakeholder group sustainable, that we understand when there is a big attention flow to digital inclusion and when there just isn't, but people are still engaged and they're still committed to this work.
Thanks for mentioning that. It is, especially in the world that you work in, as opposed to just from the private sector and other internet service providers and how they are generating communications to people, really being mindful of what is, really on everyone's mind at that moment is very valuable to that. And just sharing that with us as a reminder is great as well, because we know that this is a common issue across all areas. All right. Well, before we let everybody go, again, we are really thrilled to have you here. Thanks for getting up so early in the morning to be with us from all the way out on the West Coast, for the great work you're doing. And I think you said at the beginning, it's close to a population of what, 450,500? Is that about right?
Yes, yeah.
That's a challenge, and with the different languages that you're dealing with, and especially the stakeholders. So we want to thank you so much. Appreciate this. As one final reminder to everyone, please feel free to share additional questions when you get your follow-up email from us, either later today, tomorrow. You can also send back questions that we can get to Estefania, and she can answer those for you. Please share those in the After Action survey. And again, please join us for our 4th series in the webinar series for Learning Thursdays, happening on December the 4th with Kyla Williams. So thank you all so much. We appreciate you all. Have a great day. Everyone, happy fall, and actually, happy Thanksgiving and Veterans Day. We won't see you until after those are over. Thanks so much.